Now, in this edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked the question, now that the sequel trilogy is over, how optimistic are you about the future of Star Wars? As usual then, I'll also be reading and responding to some of your comments, as well as showing off some of the artwork and other images that were sent into me this week. Okay, wasting no time here, let's jump right to the results, where we'll see that 45% of people who voted, or nearly half, are unsure or undecided about the future of Star Wars right now. Another 12% are mostly optimistic, and 4% are very optimistic. On the other side of things, we have 26% of people who say they're not very optimistic, and a final 12% who have no hope for the future of the franchise. And before going on, I'll give my usual disclaimer that these results are not necessarily indicative of how the whole fan base feels. A different channel, a very pro, I love absolutely everything Disney Star Wars channel, would likely get very, very different results. All that said, these were more or less the results I had expected, with a majority of people being unsure or uncertain about the future, and with more of the remainder falling on the doubtful side over the hopeful side. Mostly though, I was just curious to hear what people had to say in the comments, what their actual hopes and fears are at this point. And before we get to those, let me first quickly again say thank you to everyone who does vote and comment on these polls every week, and a big thank you to those of you who send in your artwork. I got a ton this week, so if you don't see yours, and there's a good chance I won't get to all of it, because I'll mostly be reading comments this week, though I say that every week and it never turns out that way. Anyway, if you don't see yours, I'll include it in next week's video, and if for some reason you don't see it then, do please just send it to me again. I pretty much randomly pick what pictures to put where, and there's always a chance I've missed some. Also, just a reminder that if you want to direct people to your other work, or just to get credit for it, do put your name and links right on the image. Also, since I get asked this question a lot, yes, I will include non-Star Wars artwork, though I'd prefer it to still have something to do with science fiction, fantasy, or that sort of thing. But I'll likely show off pretty much anything you send in, within reason, of course. Okay, let's now get to those comments, starting as we always do with the top-rated comment, and as a matter of fact, this is the highest-rated comment I've ever seen on any of my polls, getting over 1,000 thumbs up, which has never happened before, and it comes to us from Lars Frisk, who said, Mandalorian and Rogue One have proven that Disney is capable of making good Star Wars, we just need people like Dave Filoni in charge of it. And I know I sing the praises of Dave Filoni a lot in my videos, so I'll spare you from most of that again. But I absolutely do think the guy needs to have a much, much larger role with the company, and I do believe he's being groomed for it. No, I don't think he'll be president of Lucasfilm. I think that'll be given to someone with more overall experience in the industry, someone like a Jon Favreau perhaps, assuming that's something he'd even want to do. But I absolutely see Dave Filoni being put in charge of more projects and larger projects as the years go on, if not just made the head of story development or something along those lines. Okay, next up here we have a few very similar or related comments. The first one comes to us from Mohammed Zero, who said, not very optimistic unless Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson are gone. Then we have this one from JD, who simply said, ask me again when Kathleen Kennedy's contract is up. Then this comment from Crooks and Brooks, who said, if Rian Johnson gets his trilogy, I'm out. And that's one of the reasons why Rian Johnson will never get his trilogy, because you and a lot of other people would absolutely never watch it. Not to mention, you'd have many of those people actively rebelling against him and the film, and trying to turn other people against it. I mean, for Disney right now, their best case scenario is to somehow win back the fans they've lost, or as many as they can. But if they can't do that, they at the very least don't want those fans to actively be fighting and attacking them nonstop and drawing more negative press to the franchise. And one way to avoid that is to never again bring back Rian Johnson. Another way is to then let Kathleen Kennedy walk away with her head held high when her contract expires next year, or as high as it can be held considering the diminishing returns the sequel trilogy has seen. Let it be her choice to walk away, or let her say it's her choice, when behind closed doors they may very well be pushing her out, and they both get to save face that way, and Disney doesn't have to hear about how they're firing a woman in such a prominent position. And yes, I do fully believe she will be gone next year, which, as I've said before, allows her to forever be linked to the sequel trilogy, for good or bad depending on your point of view, and for whoever else comes in next to have a clean break from it, and to be associated with wherever they take Star Wars from here. Okay, moving on now, we have this comment from Nick Cook, who said, I think with Project Luminous, Feige, Favreau, Filoni, and without Kennedy, There's a decent chance Lucasfilm has realized what a colossal mistake they've made in the sequel era. I wish they would go back to the Old Republic, but at least it seems like we should have an actual plan moving forward. If they truly do tie everything together with all media, that would be an amazing immersive experience. I think playing games, reading books, watching movies, all tied with a common thread would be a satisfying endeavor and can lead to new heights of entertainment. But this is Disney, Star Wars we're talking about, so there's a decent chance they'll blunder it because they want to maximize profits while minimizing true storytelling. And I'm very, very curious about Project Luminous and to see how extensive this plan of theirs will actually be, if it's even going to tie into the future movies like some do believe, because without question, the biggest mistake with the sequels was having no sort of overall game plan, which was obviously horrible for the movies, yes, but also meant the other sources of canon were either pointless because the stories had nothing to do with anything, or they were just there to patch what the movies had done, and that patchwork will likely continue for years to come considering what the sequel trilogy ended up. Alright, moving on, we now have this comment from Pete, the wannabe runner, who said, "Here is something to ponder. Do you think the success of the child, aka Baby Yoda, is the reason for Lucasfilm to be setting the next trilogy 400 years before the Skywalker saga, because they see people want more Yoda in depth? A well-aged, yet relatively young Jedi Yoda can have a great base in which to build this trilogy." Maybe. I don't know. I think the possibility to go to a very different time period yet still include a beloved and recognizable character if they want to or need to, that being Yoda of course, is probably one of the appealing aspects of the High Republic time period, or 400 years before the Skywalker saga. And maybe the inclusion of Baby Yoda in The Mandalorian is there for us to learn a bit more about the species to prepare us for more of the species to come in the new movies. I guess that's possible. The reason I'm skeptical, of course, is that sounds like a lot of planning, and we all know that's not their thing. Though maybe, hopefully, this is a sign of changing times. Okay, moving on now, we have this comment from Lord Kouga, who said, "Disney and Lucasfilm have utterly destroyed Star Wars. They've made it abundantly clear they don't have any respect for the fans or the source material. Luke, Han, and Leia's characters have been butchered beyond recognition and fixing. The Force is a deus ex machina that enables people to beam physical objects from one end of the galaxy to the other, like in Star Trek. Lightspeed travel is an inconsistent mess that allows people to either one-shot an entire armada of capital ships or pop in and out of Lightspeed at random without any consequence. The Clone Wars and Baby Yoda cannot repel failure of this magnitude, even if Lucasfilm and Disney came out and officially declared the sequel trilogy as non-canon. It is too little too late. The damage is done." Then we have this comment from Zeid Shell 123, who said, "Honestly, I think one of Disney's biggest mistakes was trying to crowbar another trilogy into the Skywalker saga when it was already masterfully ended and didn't have any loose plot threads. So I think getting away from the Skywalker saga is the first step of Disney's long journey to make up for the sequels." Then this comment from Azura Star, who said, "I feel like now that they aren't focused on continuing the Skywalker saga when they shouldn't have in the first place, that things can only get better from here." Okay, so all around, I certainly think the sequel trilogy did more harm than good for the franchise. In the grand scheme of things, or looking at the bigger picture or story, there's no point in it existing. It ends the story in the exact same place Return of the Jedi once had, only Return of the Jedi did it better. That said, the sequel trilogy happened, and I don't see any way they'll ever retcon the whole thing. So really, the choice every fan who wasn't happy with it has to make is, do you give Disney Star Wars another shot? Do you believe they've learned from their mistakes, forgive them for butchering the sequel trilogy, and continue to support them? Or do you give up and move on with your life? Maybe you walk away for now, but you keep an eye on things and come back if they get better. And that brings us to this comment from ObiWan Kenobi, who said, "I'm not very optimistic about Star Wars until those in power recognize and accept their mistakes. Until that happens, nothing will ever get better. But Star Wars will never be dead to me. As long as I have those original 6 movies, Star Wars will always be alive and well in my heart, and that's all that really matters." And that's the thing, nothing can ever change or take away what you do love about Star Wars, or why you became a fan in the first place once upon a time. No matter how you feel about the Disney era, or even if you walk away and never watch anything new ever again, you can and always will be a Star Wars fan, period. You don't have to love or even watch the new stuff to keep your fan status. And one of the most tiring things I hear is when people say, and it gets said to me quite often, is that you hate Star Wars now. Because first of all, each individual fan gets to determine what it means to be a fan of something. There are no prerequisites to be a Star Wars fan. As for me personally, I've only really disliked one of the movies. Everything else has either been okay or I've actually enjoyed it. And something tells me if Star Wars does indeed endure for the rest of my life, there will be other things I don't like so much and other things that I may end up loving. Anyway, I'm not sure if I'm making sense or just rambling, so let me get to a few more comments, starting with this one from Gabriel Demaria, who may say what I was trying to say a little bit better than I had. The quality of the recent trilogy won't affect Star Wars. Star Wars will always have good times and bad times. Mandalorian was awesome, and I'm positive Clone Wars Season 7 will be amazing. Star Wars will always be special to me, even if I felt like The Rise of Skywalker was incredibly meh. Next up here we have this comment then from John Speer, who said, I lean towards not very optimistic because I haven't really liked a single movie they've put out. The Force Awakens was an inferior remake, Rogue One was a slow and kind of boring movie that didn't age well for me, The Last Jedi literally broke Star Wars, Solo was a pointless movie I don't care for, and The Rise of Skywalker was an absolute mess trying to pick up the pieces of a broken franchise. Rebels was okay and Mandalorian is a little better than okay, but that's not what I need to be optimistic about the future. Until Kathleen Kennedy is fired and replaced, I will be pessimistic. And even when replaced, I need to see who's in charge before I change my outlook. I just hope they can get it right soon before they completely destroy the franchise. Next up here then, we have this comment from Iesta who said, extremely optimistic here. Fallen Order was fantastic, Mandalorian was nearly perfect, The Rise of Skywalker was fine, but that was built off of pre-existing foundations, which they don't have to use anymore because of how they're doing original stories now. Very excited for the Clone Wars Season 7 due to Filoni's excellent creative vision. ObiWan is looking really good with the return of McGregor and Deborah Chow's heading the series. And if the rumors are true about the Rebels sequel series, Maul Show, and High Republic movies, those are all things I'm happy to give a chance to, and I'm sure they'll be at least decent quality. Disney had some bumps in the road, but based off of the content we're getting now, I think they've learned their lesson, and I'm definitely ready for the next era of Star Wars. Moving on here, we have this comment from Nathan Cabe, and I really enjoyed his analogy, so here goes. They threw away the Skywalkers, the Jedi Academy, Rogue Squadron, hyperspace, any rules for the Force. This isn't Star Wars, it's generic sci-fi 125. Great job, Disney. You had the golden goose, but you chopped it up for chicken nuggets. And finally here we have this comment from Spartan 4426 who said, as weird as it sounds, I'm pretty optimistic in a now the worst is over way. Disney made good Star Wars stuff, Rogue One, Mandalorian, maybe the upcoming Obi-Wan series, and some meh stuff, Solo anyone? But a lot of the most difficult stuff on the fandom is centered on the sequels. Now that that's crashed and burned, there's a chance to be proactive and creative, rather than do damage control for a trilogy that had minimal planning and coordination. And you know, I'm just glad the sequel trilogy is over and that hopefully they learn from this and better Star Wars is to come. It's just unfortunate that the sequel trilogy had to be sacrificed for them to learn a lesson. Yes, I will likely make some new videos about the sequel trilogy here and there, especially in the coming weeks, and I'm also working on my own version of the sequels, so there's that. But I will also very much be covering the future of Star Wars on this channel, not to mention looking back at the original trilogy, the prequels, the current canon, and just talking everything Star Wars here. There's also a good chance I'll be doing videos on other topics from time to time, though as of right now, and I don't see this ever changing, I'll primarily be doing Star Wars still. I also have a second channel that, no, I haven't actually uploaded to yet, so a big thank you to those of you who subscribed over there and have been waiting for a while now to get a video, and I hope to do more fun, lighthearted videos on that channel, as well as talking more about games and collecting, and again, mostly it will just be Star Wars based like this channel. The main reason why I haven't done anything with it yet, if you've been wondering, was I wanted to get a better idea on what Cabe was all about or the new rules that YouTube has in place about targeting kids with videos, which is not the intent of the second channel, but could probably be seen that way by someone not taking a closer look. Anyway, I will be changing the name of that channel and posting videos to it very, very soon, so if you're interested in it at all, there will be a link in the description below. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me how bright or dark you think the future of the Star Wars franchise is. Also, where would you take the franchise next? A question like that will likely be next week's poll question, and should be up by the time you're watching this video or very soon after. Either way, leave a comment somewhere and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.